Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. Let us start by giving you all a quick brief on what Octanet is. So, Tech Octanet is a budding startup headquartered in Bhubaneswar, specializing in IT solutions across diverse sectors including e-commerce, real estate, automation, and personalized business application. Our primary focus is to provide affordable services to startups, aiding them into their digital initiatives. In addition to our core services, we are expanding into the corporate training sector, aiming to equip future corporate employees with a solid foundation. We also address student needs by identifying academic project requirements, internship opportunities, and offering comprehensive solutions. We are proud to be incorporated as an organization with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, registered with MSME, and approved by AICTE for internship programs. Also, our commitment to quality is underscored by ISO 9001 2015 certification, ensuring that every project we undertake reaches highest standards of excellence. Okay, thank you so much. That was all. Let us now stage our instructor and start today's session.
Hello students, welcome to the Python Development Workshop Day 1. In today's session, it is going to be a 4-day long workshop. In the day 1, we'll cover the introduction to Python, how does the file compiles and its ID setup. We'll also learn about the variables and a very basic overview of the list. Let's get started. I'll present my screen. Okay. So to learn the programming language, we first need to know how, if we write a small piece of code, how it get executed through our machine. So for that, we look to the overview of the compiler and the interpreter, how the Python compilation and the execution takes place, and we'll at the last we'll look how CPU, main memory, and the storage working devices work together to store our results. So coming on to the compiler. Compiler translates your code written in a very high level programming language into the machine code at once before the program runs, whereas an interpreter translates each high level program statement one by one into the machine code during the program runs. Like if we differentiate between a compiler and an interpreter, interpreter translate your each statements one by one, whereas the compiler translates your code entirely. Compiled code runs faster than the interpreted code because the compiler codes run faster as it takes the entire code at once. Compiler displays all the errors after the compilation. On the other hand, the interpreter displays the error line by line. Compilation is based on the translation linking loading model, whereas interpreter is based on the interpretation method. However, some of the examples that programming language who use compiler are C, C++, C Sharp, Java, etc. Whereas for interpreter, we have the Python, PHP, Perl, Ruby, JavaScript, jQuery, etc. For the Python compilation and execution, how a particular Python code gets saved and it executes and the compilation takes place is Python virtual machine makes the Python platform independence. So if you write a code in your code editor and it gets saved into a source code with the extension .py file, now this extension file is taken by the Python interpreter to convert it into a bytecode. This bytecode will be taken over by the Python virtual machine and will finally be given to operating system to perform a particular task that is assigned to it, and then further uh, result it back to the user. Now we'll see how the CPU, main memory, and the storage works together to save your results. See, the CPU is the place where most of the instructions from the memory gets executed. The CPU uses a program counter to keep a track of which of the instruction is to fetch first. The CPU sends a request to a memory for the instruction. The CPU decodes the instructions in the control unit. The CPU carries out the operation specified in the instruction using the ALU, that is arithmetical logical unit. Main memory. Main memory, as you all know, it's basically a RAM where the instructions are temporarily stored and the computer stored until the computer is running. When the power is switched off, the memory does not store any of the data. So it is essential to store your data into a permanent place so that it does not loses its worth. The CPU can access data in the main memory randomly. The CPU uses the cache memory to determine if the data is already available before accessing the main memory. So before the main memory, there is also cache memory, which contains some of the latest or the recent works that you have done. So CPU, once it goes to the main memory, it also sees if there is a particular work or anything task is already stored in the cache memory, then it takes over from there. For the permanent storage devices, we have ROMs, we have EROMs, where secondary storage devices are there. Like suppose as hard drives, we have ROMs. These secondary storage devices are basically used to store your data permanently. They contain your data even when the power is switched off. The CPU uses addresses and data buses to communicate with the memory. Okay, so in this slide, we can see that we have two types of softwares. We have system softwares and we have application software. So whenever you purchase any electronic devices, it can be a CPU, it can be any laptop or something. It can be even your phone. So what it basically contains, it basically contains two types of software: system softwares and the application softwares. System softwares are those software which are already inbuilt in your devices and are particularly required to run your device smoothly, whereas application softwares are the softwares or the applications that you require based on your own usage. Like for a particular thing, you require MS Office, MS Excel, or something like that. For example, for system softwares, we have File Explorer in the computer, we have Disk Manager, and we have other management devices also. What is persistent data? Persistent data is the data which is kept stored in the secondary storage devices, and it remains stored even if the power is switched off. So I told you how and when CPU executes the statements. Whenever you provide any instructions to the CPU, it sees whether it is there in the cache or not. If it is not there in the cache, it will go to the main memory. If it is not there in the main memory, it will go to the secondary storage to fetch up the data, to execute the task and return back the results to the user. Now we will see how the Python works and how various types of data are stored in Python. To store a data in a Python or any of the programming language, you need a variable. So variables are used to store the data, which can be manipulated later on also. Variables can contain any number of letters, digits, or underscore characters. Also, they must begin with a letter and no special characters such as underscore and hash, anything like that. Okay, Python is case sensitive. That means the uppercase and the lowercase are significant. We'll see to this slide more when we'll do the practical side by side. The variable name should not be a keyword. So there are certain words in Python language that are already reserved for some of the functioning of the language. So you cannot use that word as a variable name. To define any variable, if you have two words for it, never leave a space between it because it is considered as invalid in a language. The variables must be meaningful, as carefully chosen words make your code readable. Like whenever you are using a name for a variable, try to make it as meaningful as you can so that when you read a code, you get a better understanding of it. We will use a lower camel case. First letter of every word is capitalized except the first word. For example, total marks. Okay. So let's see how we can create a variable in a Python. Okay. Let's see. First, we'll write here what is. So, okay. So, whenever you write a comment in a Python language, we use a hashtag. So, we'll see what are variables. Variables are containers for storing data values. Okay. So let's say if we have a variable name, let's say x, and we assign a value 10 to it. Okay. Okay, we'll notice this. Okay. Then we have a y variable, let's say, and we assigned a string value to it, let's say hello world. Okay. Then we have another, let's say z as a variable, and we assigned a variable value to it 3.14. That's the value for the pi. Okay. So as you can say that I will tell you that there are numerous types of data types that are provided by the Python to make your code more interesting. So for the 10, this is an integer type of data type. Hello world, which is assigned to a variable name y, is a string. Z, which has the value 3.14, is a float. For the decimal type of systems or the storage elements, we use the float data type. Now let's say if you want to print anything, if you want to print these elements, let's say if we have x, okay, print, let's say to write print y. Okay, similarly we'll print the z. Okay, okay, we'll see what output does this gives. This should give the value for each of our variable x, y, and z. Okay. Okay, till the time it's running or it's executing in the cell, I'll tell you that you can use a numerous type of code editors to write your Python program. The one that I'm using is a Google Colab. It is basically an online editor provided by the Google to write your Python codes. Okay, so you got this, that it has printed the value of x as 10, y as hello world, and z as 3.14. X is a data type is an integer data type, hello world is a string data type, and 3.14 is a float data type. Okay, so as I told you that Python includes or supports various types of data types such as int, float, string, boolean, and many more. Let's see if we have another value, like let's say it's a, and write give this word as a true. Okay, and I'll print this as well. Okay, okay, so it has printed the value of a as true. Here this a contains the value as true, and this t for this true should always be capital, so that your program or the compiler take it as a boolean value. As I told you already, I'll tell you again. We'll now see the types of, we looked on upon to the types of data variables. Okay, as I told you, Python supports various types of data types such as integer, string value, boolean, float, and many more. Okay. Now we'll see how we can see a type of any of the variable. For any variable that you have assigned a particular value, how we can see the data type of that type of a variable. Let's see if you have these values x as 10. Okay. Y as hello world. Okay. Z as 3.14. A as let's say true. Okay. Now if you want to print the type of variable that x is carrying, a is carrying, y is carrying, and z is carrying, we'll particularly write print. Print is used to display the output of any of the thing that you want to display on your screen. Let's see. We'll write the data type of x is. Okay. We'll use the function type x. So this type function takes the argument as a variable name. Okay. I will simply write for the y, z and a. Okay. Always students remember that uh, in the very starting of learning of any of the programming language, try to write the each statement by yourself rather than copying it from the above, because it actually increases your efficiency to write the code more efficiently without very less errors. Okay, so we're now going to print the type for the variable of z. Type of a. Okay, cool, let's print this. Okay, so I'm saying that the data type for x is class. It belongs to a class of integer. Y belongs to the class of string. Z belongs to the class of float, and A belongs to the class of bool. Now I'm going to tell you some of the rules that you should keep in mind while you name your variables. Okay. The variables must always start with a letter or an underscore. Cool. A variable must start with the letter or an underscore. Cool. Underscore by underscore I mean this one. Okay. Second rule is that once you have named a first letter of your variable as a letter or an underscore, the rest of the name can include a good combination of letters, numbers, and underscore. So the rest of the name can include combination of letters, numbers, or underscores. Okay. Okay. So the third is, let me tell you, the variable names are case sensitive. Case sensitive means a small letter b is not a capital, is not equal to capital letter B. I'll tell you. Okay. Remember that the variable names cannot be any keyword. Keyword, like I'll give you some example for the keyword. Like let's say if, else, for, while, and can be, let's say, int, etc., and so on, cannot be your variable names. Okay, cannot be your variable names. Let's see again. Let's suppose, just to make you more familiar with the rules for naming of the variables, we'll look to some of the very basic type of variable names. Let's say if I have a variable name as valid underscore number, okay, and I'll give this as, let's say I'll give the value 1. Okay, again I have this. I'll start my variable name with the underscore. Let's say I write it as valid number. Okay, let's say if I say this value of 2. Now if I write a valid number, I use again underscore and write x variable number copy, let's say, and I'll give a value 3 to it, let's say. And if I'll print each of these variables to see whether there is an error in any of the variables or not. Yeah, I'll print this, then I'll write underscore. Okay, then I'll write print valid number copy. Okay, now I'll just print them to see whether it is there, if there's an error or not. Because if there's any error in like if you name a variable, it will significantly show up here when the output gets printed. Okay, so for this we have valid number like we have assigned a value 1. For a underscore valid number we have assigned a value 2. For a valid number copy we have assigned a value 3, and all of them are printed. That means this is a valid, these are one of the valid names for naming of the variables. Now let's see some of the invalid examples. Let's say if we start our variable name with a number. Let's say if I give this value 1. Okay, and I'll just print this. Let's see it's significantly showing a red line, but still we'll print this just to have a better. Okay, invalid decimal literal. That means that significantly says that you cannot start your variable name with any number. Since we have started this variable name with a number, it has shown up an error. Okay, now let's see another type of example. Like we have a variable name. We have here we have shown that the there are underscores between two, right? There are underscores between the two words we have used just to combine them, because we have already learned that we can never leave two words in a variable name as a white space. It provides an error to us. Okay, cool. Okay, let's see how we can do this. Okay, suppose if to combine two words I used a hyphen or any of the minus sign, will significantly show up an error, because we have been told to combine any two words in a Python for a variable name that contains a combination of two words. We have to use an underscore. We cannot leave it with the white space or any other statement. Now for a chance we'll use the hyphen here. Let's we assign a value 1, and I will print this to get, does we have, are we correct? Okay, Okay, let's print this. Okay, so as I told you, hyphens are not allowed. To combine two words in Python for a variable name, you have to use underscore. Cool. Now we'll see. Now we'll see an example for a reserved word. Then we'll proceed ahead. If we suppose this is print is a, as you know, print is a keyword which is basically used to display the output that you want. Okay, cool. So this print is a reserved keyword or is a reserved word for a Python language. For a Python, this word is particularly performing some of the function. Now, keeping aside that we already know it, we'll see if we keep print as a variable name, what does this give us? Okay, so let's. Okay, as I told you, reserved word cannot be used since it has provided us with an error. If we give this a new number, let's say sum. Okay. Okay, we could change it. Okay, it should particularly print the value 2 because the sum carries the value 2. I think sum is also a reserved word, I guess. Let's add. We'll just say this if it is an X value, okay, for more better. Okay, cool. I don't know what's this error. Okay, we'll see this later, but for the time being, you can keep in mind that you cannot use a reserved word as a variable name. Now we will see a more example over the type function that we have done before. Okay. Okay. The type function is used to define the type of variable that a particular variable name is carrying. Okay. Okay, so as you must be wondering about why I'm using these upper commas, because they are basically widely used to provide multi-line comments in a code. I have told you earlier that you can use hashtag for a single line comment, but you can use triple commas to have the multi-line comments. Okay, suppose if you have sample, we're not very okay. Okay, now we'll write print. Try to make your code as much as informative as possible, because since it provides the more readability and efficient reading to a somebody else who has not been ever looked up into your code. Okay. Type of, let's say sample. Okay. Let's run this. As you already know, it will belong to a class of integer. Int object is not callable. Okay, so there must be some error with the fact. Keep I guess there's some error. Let me see if we can have a value of x equal to 2. So here what we did, we define a variable name as sample variable. We assigned a value 31 to it. Then we print the type of a sample variable. For that we used this type function which has the variable name as the argument. Okay. Now if we have another variable, let's say str variable, we have, let's say we have Python. Okay, now if we write print it should particularly print. I don't know what this error is coming up. We've already used it a numerous number of times in the above part. It has not given any error. I don't know what is wrong with this. Since this piece of code is correct, I need to see it in the compiler or in the other thing that is particularly there, which is giving us an error. But this piece of code is correct. For this, we have already used. I told you that we have created a variable named str variable, which has given we have given up a value as Python. Now we have print to see the type of variable that it is holding, and we should particularly get that it belongs to a class of integers. Okay, as I've already told you some of the comments that we how to comment in Python or why we use comments in Python. Let's again look back to this. So comments in Python. Comments are used to explain the code. Also, Python supports various single line and multi-line comments. For single line, we use hashtag. So Python supports single line comments. Single line comments as well as multi-line comments. Okay, let's look to the single line comment example. So to use the hashtag, we can only write a comment into a single line, and this is an example. Suppose this is sample single line comment. Okay, to make a better look, we'll particularly write a print statement there and we'll like to print a single single line comments starts with a hashtag. Okay, okay, cool. There's a particularly, I guess there's a problem in the print statement. I'll create another notebook here. Okay, so we were basically learning on the comments. We were writing a print statement there. Suppose if you write print for a single line comment in Python, we use a hashtag. Let's print this. I've already told you in the previous notebook that for multi-line comment we use these three apostrophes followed by any number of line of code that you want to be as commented, or you want to write any of the background working of your code or anything that you don't want to display it, but you want that whenever you read your code and anybody else reads your code, you are able to justify it properly. Then we use this multi-line comments. I guess it will take little time. Okay, so it has printed. I guess that there's a problem with the something in the backend only here. No problem. We'll see here that for a print statement or for a single line print statement, we use hashtag. Okay, to print always remember comments are never printed when your output is displayed. Comments are only to make sure that the user or anybody else who is reading the code make it more readable. For a multi-line comments, let's write. This is a multi-line comment. Remember guys, this is a multi-line. It can span multiple line. It can contain cool. Just to close this, we again use a three uh, four, three commas for the apostrophes. We'll write a print statement for this. We use the triple quotes to enclose. Use the triple quotes to enclose our multiple line comments. Cool. Okay. Okay, so for I've already told you that for Python, small a and capital A is not same. They are different values. So it has been differentiated using ASCII values. ASCII values are basically a particular number that has been assigned to a different characters to differentiate between them. Suppose we are learning about the ASCII values now. Now we see some of the functions that are associated with the ASCII values. Use the ORD or order function to get the ASCII value of n. the ASCII value of a character. Secondly, if you want to get a character from the ASCII value, use the CHR or the character function. Okay, I will look to a block of code after this. If you have a variable name character such as, okay, if we have, let's say, a capital A as the value inside it. We have a variable name, let's say sky value, where we'll store the value, where we'll store the sky value of this capital letter A. Let's say if we have already told you that we will use the order function to get the sky value of any of the character. So we'll use the order function here, followed by character. The name of our character is, now we'll print the sky value of capital letter A is. Okay. Here we'll write this as sky. Let's print this. Okay, so it is saying that the sky value for capital letter A is 65. Now we'll see whether what is the sky value for same letter but in the lowercase. I'll read this as character 1 so that you can differentiate between the two. Okay, I'll print to see what is the value for this. The sky value of lowercase letter A is, okay, okay, let's print this. So the ASCII letter for small letter A is 97. Since the ASCII value for both of them is different, and hence the Python will take both of them to be different characters. Okay. Now we'll see a basic functioning of the char function as well, and then we'll wind up with this variable part. Okay. And let's see, since we know the value for capital letter and small letter A, we'll use this only to take a check on our the char function. Let's see if we have an variable as sky value as 65. Okay, which we know that it's already that it's the ASCII value of capital letter A. Now we'll use the character. Okay, char function which has the argument as the ASCII value. Okay, now we'll print this. ASCII value 65 is okay. Okay, let's print this. Okay, so it's saying that the character of ASCII value 65 is A. Similarly, you can do for the small a as well. Let's now look back. Okay, this was our file initially. Cool. So we already got to know that variables are the containers for storing the data values. They can use, they can store any type of data, any data type. It can be even float, a decimal, an integer, a boolean value, or a string, anything, or a character even. Then we saw that how we can see a type of variable that a variable particularly is holding using the type function. Type function is basically type function is basically used and takes up the argument as the variable. Then we saw some of the basic rules for the functioning of for the naming of a variable. We got to know that a variable must starts with a letter or an underscore. There should not be any white space between two words in a variable name. The rest of the name can be a combination of letter, underscore, special character, anything else. Variable names are case sensitive. That means you should be very particular regarding the case that you're using. The variable names cannot be any keyword, that is it, if, else, for, while, int, bool, print. Any keyword that is already defined inside the Python cannot be used as a variable name. Then saw some of the numerous example of how the particular valid and the invalid entries are taken into the compiler. Then we saw the comments in Python. Comments in Python are basically the fact that to make your code more readable, more understanding to any other person who is reading your code first time, or who is trying to understand a piece of a functioning of your code. Then okay, so for that I already told you, for a single line comment, just to write a single line and wanted it to be comment, we use hashtag. For a multiple line comments, we used triple quotes. Okay, we use these triple quotes, write any number of lines inside it and then close it again. Then till then, this whole portion will always be counted as a comment section only. Then we saw the ASCII values. ASCII values in Python are basically used to differentiate between different types of characters. There are different numbers or the ASCII values given to the every character, and hence we saw later that how small a and capital letter A are different in Python. We use the order function to get any ASCII value of a particular character. We use the char function or the character function to get the character from a particular ASCII value. Now we'll go back to our PPT where we were when just reading it we couldn't find much things to be very clear, but now we got to know that variables are used to store data which can be manipulated later on. Remember, the variables that you've assigned can be manipulated later on anywhere inside your code. It can contain any number of letters, digits, or underscore characters. They must begin with a letter and no special symbols. Python is case sensitive, I've already told you. The variable name should not be a keyword. I've told you that also. White space, all point also I've told you. The variable name must be meaningful because it makes the code more readable. Okay. So now we'll see the identifiers, literals, and tokens. User defined alphanumeric words to identify a variable, function, class, module, or other object is called an identifier. So anything that is user defined to define your variable or identify your variable, function, class, module, anything is called as an identifier. Like there's some raw data, like there's some numeric literals, or there are like boolean or anything that is that is a raw data that is stored inside a variable is basically your special literals or anything like. Okay, so tokens are smallest unit of program. Tokens contains keywords, identifiers, and operators. Operators can be and or not. Keywords can be, I told you, like already defined in, they have already defined a function for the particular type of a keyword. Then I told you about the, then I already told you about the comments. To write a single line comment, we use hashtag, whereas to write a multi-line comment, we use triple quotes. Okay, let's do debugging. So whenever you see that there's a error inside your code, you try to fix that. The debugging is the process of finding the errors and try to resolve it. There are numerous types of errors inside a Python. They can syntax errors, runtime errors, semantic errors, and other types of errors. Syntax error, basically you use the wrong syntax, then there will be exceptions occurring. Semantic errors, that you, maybe there is some invalid logic, or the logic or the operators or anything that you are performing is not correct. Runtime error is basically the error that occurs during the runtime. This error part we will see more in detail in the upcoming sessions. But for the timing, you can keep in your mind that whenever you see error inside your code, try to debug it and try to solve the errors and resolve. So this is just an overview of what we are trying to do it in the future classes. So the functions are the block of code that is reusable. Functions will be executed only when it is called. A function can take any number of arguments, which is optional. Even you cannot, even you can omit the arguments. A function can have no argument as well. It returns data. Since we are not paying more heed to it right now, we will move ahead with the conditional statements in Python, and then we'll move ahead with the list wala part. But for the time being, you can keep in mind that functions are a block of code, or is a piece of some of the code lines that you can reuse inside your code. Functions will only be executed when they will be called. If you write if you write a piece of, and suppose if you write a piece of code and you want it to be executed, it will be executed only when it will be caught. You should not worry that if you have written a code, you have to particularly find out. No, you will be, a particular function will only be called when it will be like called inside a program, or it will be executed only then. Also, functions can take any number of arguments. That is also very optional. It can, a function can return a data. Now we'll move ahead with the built-in functions and conditional statements. So I've already told you from this slide of the function that functions are a block of code that is reusable. So in Python, there are two types of functions: built-in functions and the user-defined functions. Built-in functions are those functions that are already defined inside the Python and are always ready to use. Such as some of the example for the built-in functions are input, eval, composition, print, type, round, type conversion, min and max, pow, a random number generation. So for each of them, I'll tell you. For the input, it is basically used to take an input from the user. Eval is used for the evaluation or to evaluate. Composition is another type of built-in function. Print, I already told you, to print the output. Type is to see the type of variable. Round is basically another type of built-in function. Type conversion is to convert int into float, a string into int. Okay, minimum, min and max are basically used to find the minimum and maximum of something. Pow is generally used to find the power of any number. Random number generation is like how you can generate a random number when a particular range is given or anything like that. Now, the second type of built-in function is user defined functions, which we will see in the later classes. For the time being, you can only keep in mind that there are two types of functions: user defined and the built-in functions. Built-in functions, some examples I've already told you. There will be others coming in the sessions. Okay, now we'll move ahead with the conditional logic. So conditional logic, if else and elif. There are three conditional statements inside a Python: if, else, and elif. If statements helps to control the execution of program based on the boolean expression results. Okay, like it will basically use, like the if else statements allows you to execute a block of code if a condition is true, otherwise it executes another block of code. Okay, if clause is mandatory statements, whereas elif and else clauses are optional. So whenever you are defining and any condition inside a function or in your code, if clause is always mandatory. Like you have to use the if statement. If you don't use the if statement, you cannot use the else and the elif statement. But whereas if you have used the if statement, that is not a compulsory or a very mandatory condition to use the elif or the else clauses. Third point is if clause always be evaluated first. That means whenever there is a conditional statements coming in, the if block of code will always be evaluated first. If it is true, then the statement inside it will be executed. And if it's not true, the elif or the else block of code will be executed. Remember, only one block of code can be executed at each time. That means for the time being, when the if block of code is executing, the else or the elif part of the block will not be executed. Remember, all statements within a clause end when the indentation ends. That means whenever a particular block of if conditional statements end, then all statements within the clause will also end. So this is a conditional logic for the if, else, and elif. Let's see. We'll see this part later on. Right now we'll see this flow chart. From here, from the start, the code is starting. There's a statement printed on the screen that enter a number less than 10. Then there is an input statement that where the user will enter a number. Now, if the number less is greater than 10, then no part will be executed. And if the number is less than 10, then this. Then a print statement, what an obedient servant you are will be printed. Since the number you have entered is greater than 10, then the stop, then it will be followed by a stop. But if you have entered a number which is less than 10, then a print statement, what a obedient servant you are will be printed. Now we'll see this. This is basically the syntax for the code. Okay, if followed by a boolean expression. After if there is a boolean expression, it write an expression that always result in a boolean value, either true or false. It should not return any other type of data type, else this block of code will not be executed. Then we have an else statement. I already told you we can omit else and elif statement. But if you want to write a piece of a code that should be more readable and should be more meaningful, then try to include your else statement as well. Else statement does not have any boolean expression, remember. Only if and elif are the conditional statements that carries the boolean expressions. Chained condition. Okay. So chained condition is in which we use the elif part also. For example, if then we have a boolean. Suppose if you have different type of condition in which it can be a particular type of code can be true, then you can use the elif condition. Similarly, for the if, you can use the elif also. Now we will see the nested conditional logics. Suppose just like if there is a particular if and else block of code, then you can include another if and else block of code inside a if or inside a else or inside a elif. This nested or this coming of a new block of conditional statement inside a conditional statement is known as the nested conditional statements. Okay, now we will see the now we will see the mm, some of the practical part for this also. Conditional statement. First we will say the if statement. Okay. Wait, I have to put this also. Okay. Okay. So here we are writing something about the and else statements here. If else statements allowed you to execute a block of a code, if the if condition is true, if block will be executed, otherwise else block will be executed. Okay. Another block of code. Cool. Now we'll see the syntax for this. We'll write if, and we have a condition or the boolean expression followed by a colon. Remember, colon should not be omitted. We'll have some code block to execute if condition is true. Condition is true. Okay. Now we'll write for the else. You already know that else does not have any condition. Else is the default thing. If none of the thing of the elif or the if part will be executed, then the mm, else part will be executed. Code block to be executed if a condition is false. Cool. Now we'll write. Okay, let's close this multiple endpoints. Okay. Now we'll see a very basic example of this. Let's see if we have x as a variable and we assign a value 10 to it. Now we'll write if. If we have written if, now we have to write a condition. If let's say if x is get greater than 10, okay, followed by a bool, gets print x is greater than x is greater than okay, we have kept a value 10. Okay, let's keep 5. Okay, x is greater than 5. Okay, cool. Now we'll define the else part. Since else don't have any condition, we simply write the print statement there that x is not greater than is not greater than 5. Let's execute this. Okay. So since we know that 10 is greater than 5 and hence the part of the code is executed, let's write here 3. Then we'll see it should particularly print that exit not greater than 5. Okay, cool. This was the basic functioning for how the if else statement works. In the if else statement, I've already told you that the if block of code will be executed only when the if condition is true. Otherwise, the else block of the code will be executed. Okay. Now we'll see, as we've already studied about some of the nested conditional statements. Let's look example to it. See, I'm writing so many times the print statements with proper meaning and comments just to make sure that whenever you get into a code, how you can easily understand the code. Okay, my just motto was this: to write a particular thing repeated number of times. I know it's a wastage of time, but somewhere it is going to provide you the efficiency of providing a good typing skills to write your code. Okay. Let's take the previous example only. We'll keep a value x as 10. Okay. Now let there's a twist. We were just looking for some greater part, whether it is greater than this or not greater than this. But now we'll see uh, how we can use a particular if else statement inside a if or else block. Suppose if we write if x is greater than 0, let's say. That is obviously the case. It is here, it's greater than 0. Now we have a new if statement there. If x is when divided by 2, if leaves no remainder, that's it, that means 0. Cool. Then we'll print x is a positive even number. Okay. Else we'll see this else is a this else is a part of this if statement. The else statement for the first if is still not declared remain. Remember this. Okay. Print x is a positive part number. Okay, so I've already told you this if was the part of second if statement that we have defined inside the if part. Now we'll define the else part of the first if statement. Else print x is a negative number. Okay, let's run this. Okay, since we know that, let's understand this piece of code. Here we have a variable which has the value 10. Now we have a if statement which is saying that if the value of x is greater than 0, that is obviously the case here. Now we have again a if statement inside if statement that is saying if this x is divisible by 2, this percentage sign will display the divisibility of a particular number. Here it is with 2, that means if x is particularly divisible by 2, that means the remainder is 0. Then print that x is a positive even number. But if now the else part of this statement is saying that if that is not true, if it is not divisible by 2 and the remainder is something else rather than 0, then we'll print that x is a positive odd number. And if in this case x is not even greater than 0, then this second if else statement won't work, because for this block of code, for the second piece of if else statement to work, the first if else if condition should be true. Since if this is not true, the x is less than 0, then this will print that x is a negative number. Let's just give this a minus sign here. Okay, so it's saying that x is a negative number. Since this condition is only not verified, then this block of code won't be executed only. Okay, and now we will see the if and elif. Okay. So the basic condition where we require the if elif statements to be used is that when you want to check the multiple conditions. Okay, when you just want to check the single condition, you can use single if else, but if you want to check the multiple conditions, you have to use the elif also. This I can say that this elif can be omitted with the various nested statements, but since the being the else or the conditional statements to make nested, there's a lot of logic and the complex situation that is being created to make it more readable and efficient for user perspective. We always use elif. So I already told you that we use elif to check the multiple conditions. So we'll just write here that also is used when we want to check the multiple conditions. So we have got a multiple scenarios to check upon. Okay. Okay. Now we'll see the syntax. F will let the condition followed by colon. We'll have some statements to be executed if part is true. Then we have elif. We again have the condition here. Have some statements here. Okay, so there can be a numerous number of elif statements. I've just written one. You can include as number of as elif statement you want. Okay, so this is the basic syntax that we use while we see that if elif and else statements how work. You can use any number of elif statements inside a if and else statement. As per my knowledge, you can use any number of if conditions, but you can only use a single else statement. Okay. Let's have a basic overview of. Suppose if you have a variable x and we define have a 15 value assigned to it. If we'll write a condition here, if x is less than 10, then print x is less than 10. Elif, we already know. Let's write that if x is equal to that means you have a particular value assigned to equal to checks for the equality, whereas single equals to checks for the assigns the value to it. Okay, there's a difference between the single equal to operator and the double equal to operator. Double to equal to operator particularly checks for the equality, whereas a single equal operator assigns the value. Okay, let's print x is equal to 15. Okay, else we will write x is greater than 15. Okay, okay, let's run this code. So in this piece of code, what will be there? Okay, so we assigned a value of x is equal to 15. It went, the condition of if statement will be executed first. Then here we saw that x is not less than 10. This piece of code will not be executed. Now the pointer goes to the elif part. Elif has told that is the value of x equal to 15? Yes. Then this elif block of code will be executed and the print statement x is equal to 15 will be printed. Similarly, if I write here 20, okay, so it has, for the if statement it is not less than 10. It is, even for the elif part it is not equal to 15, but for the else part it is greater than. Else part meaning any condition, any above condition of if or elif is not specified, then this else part will be executed. Remember, if any if or elif part is executed and the condition is satisfied, then never ever the else part will be executed. Similarly, if you write, let's say if you write a value 2, okay, then it is obviously less than 10. The if part should be executed. Okay, it has printed that x is less than 10. Now we'll basically see a small grading system where you can use a elif statement. Okay, this is basically a very real life example of how you can use it. Okay, so this example demonstrates the use of if, elif, and else. To determine the grades based on a score. Okay, let's say your score is 85. Okay, okay, cool. You must be wondering that this piece of code is already there in my, or it is already there. It's already shading it, but see, I've already written this piece of code several numerous times, so it gives me a hint that do you want to have this piece of code again? So I can, like, I can bring it to in a single click, but I'm writing just to make sure that you people also learn to write it, so that you have a better uh, this technical knowledge. You may able to resolve your errors or see where you have to place a colon, where you have to write the things. Okay, now let's see if we have a score as a variable. Let's say 85. Okay, now we'll see if score is greater than or equal to 90. Okay, we'll say that, let's give it a grade as A. We'll write print. Okay, similarly we'll write the elifs. elif. For elif, we have like if the score is greater than or equal to 80, print the grade. Similarly, since it is not true that the score is only greater than 80 or 90 or maybe equal to 80 or 90, we have several other things. A student can have a score of 73, 74, or in a range of anything. So we'll have multiple conditions to check, and I've already told you to check the multiple conditions, you have to use the elif statements. Okay, elif. Elif score is greater than or equal to 70, print grade as C. Cool. Elif. Elif score is greater than or equal to 60. We'll give this the grade as, let's say, D. Okay. Okay. Cool. Now we'll just have to define the else part. More conditions can be given, but just have a basic overview of how these elif statements work. You can only, like, for this is sufficient. Okay. Now we'll define the else part. We'll write the print grade F. Okay. Okay. Since let me explain the functioning of this code. We have defined a variable code that has the value 85. Okay, this value can be even taken up from the user as well. Okay, if this value of score is greater than or equal to 90, the grade will be A. If it will be greater than or equal to 80, it will be B. If it is greater than or equal to 70, that means it's C. If it is greater than or equal to 60, that means D. Otherwise, whatever the score is, we will just have the grade F for this. I have already told you this elif will be executed only when the first if will be not be satisfied. The second elif will only be executed when the first elif will not be satisfied, or the if and the elif both will not be satisfied. The third elif will only be executed when the two elifs and the if will not be satisfied. The else part will only be executed when none of the elif and if will be satisfied. Okay. The other example for like the nested statements, conditional statements, we can use a leap year checker. This is also a popular example. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's have okay, see again this. Okay, it's cool. Now I'll write here if the year percentage 4, that means divisibility with 4, is equal to 0, that means there is no remainder left. Okay. Now we'll have another if statement inside this if year Now we'll see the divisibility with 100 as well. So for a basic understanding of a leap year is one which is divisible by 4, 4, 100 and 400. Just to check like it is a leap year or not. The basic condition is this only. Now we have checked the divisibility for 400, and now we'll check the divisibility for if year percentage 400 is equal to 0. Cool. Okay. Then we have to print that year is a leap year. See, this is given an error because we need to define the else part as well. Okay. Now we have to define the else part of this. Okay. Now I'll define else part for this. Else it is not a leap year. Is not a leap year. Okay. Okay. Now we'll define the else part for the second if statement else. Print now we'll define the else part for the very first else if statement. Okay, that is else. Agar like if none of the condition is satisfied, then we'll definitely going to say that it's not a leap year. So we'll just print that as well. Print year is not a leap year. Okay. 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 Cool. There's an indentation error. Remember, Python is a very indentation language. That means it is very much prerequisite with some of the things. So better you just have a better focus over this. So there's some indentation error. Okay. I guess I just need to have this. Okay. Indentation errors are removed. So in this, when we are seeing this type of code, it's particularly an example to check the working of the nested if else statements. We have taken a variable name as year, which is the value 2024. Let's say you can check it, you can change it, or you can even take it from the user using the input function. Now if we are checking to check the leap year, we need to check that the particular year is divisible by 400, is also divisible by 100, or is also divisible by 4. See, if you check a divisibility by 400, that means divisibility of 100 and 4 both are specified there, both are done there, then we can definitely say that it's a leap year. But when you see that it is only divisible by 100, then you are not sure that it is particularly divisible by 4 as well. Then you will write that it is not a leap year. But if you check that it is divisible by 100 as well as by 4, then we say that in the second else statement that it is a leap year. But if only thing that if even the divisibility with 4 is only not satisfying there, then you can never ever say that it is going to be a leap year. Okay, so this was all about the conditional statements that we talked about. We talked about that there are built-in functions. There are two types of functions: built-in functions and user-defined functions. Built-in functions, we saw numerous types of functions. Input, which is basically used to take the input from the user, out print to display the output. We use the type conversions to convert a particular variable to a different type of data type. We saw min max functions to select the minimum and maximum of a particular value. We use the power function to see how we can use a power function that is there in the maths library to display a power of a particular number. You can also use the random generation function to randomly generate a particular number. Then we saw some of the conditional statements inside the Python. The three conditional statements inside the Python are if, elif, and else. It is always used to control the execution of a program based on the particular Boolean expression that is based upon the result. If clause is always mandatory, and elif and else clause are optional. That means your if part will always be executed. Then we have a like if part will only be executed if it is true, otherwise the else or the elif part will be executed. Also, at a particular time, only a one piece of block will be executed. Remember, all the statements with a particular indentation will end with a particular clause whenever the indentation ends. This was the basic flowchart of how elif and else part works inside in a conditional statement. Then we saw the nested conditional statement. That means how we can have a if else block inside of if else statement. Okay. Then here we saw some of the practical examples of it. That is, we took a value of x as 3, and then we say if this value is greater than 5, then print it is greater than 5. If it is not greater than 5, then we have included it in the else part, and we said that it print that it is not x was greater than 5. Similarly, we saw some of the examples of the nested if else statements, where I told you how you can use if else statement inside an if else. Then I told you about the if and elif. If and elif, basically elif is used when you have multiple conditions to check. Okay. Then we got that. Then we have a very sweet and simple example of this elif. Then we saw two example that is based on the practical life application. One is of the grading system and other is the leap year checker. In the grading system, we try to find out the grade of a particular student using by the score we know. Suppose we have a score value greater than or equal to 90, we assigned a grade A. If it is greater than or equal to 80, we assigned B. If it is greater than or equal to 70, we assign C. If it is greater than or equal to 60, we assign D. And else we have defined it as F. Remember, this if will be executed, then grade A will be printed. This elif will only be executed when this f will be not be satisfied. The second elif will only be executed when the if and the elif part will not be satisfied. The third elif will only be executed when the two elifs and the one f will not be satisfied. This else will be executed when none of the elif and the if will be satisfied. Here in the leap year checker program, we saw that if you have a particular value of an year, let's say 2024, then to check the divisibility of a particular year, we check to see that it is a leap year or not. We simply say that if it is divisible by 100 and it is divisible by 4, then it is going to be a leap year for sure. So first we have a statement to check the divisibility with 4, second to check the divisibility with 100, third to check the divisibility with 400. Since if it is divisible by 400, that means the divisibility of 4 and 100 will automatically get satisfied there. So we can directly say that it is going to be a leap year. Secondly, if we see that if it is divisible by 100, that means we are not pretty sure about it, that is going to be a leap year, then we say that it is not a leap year. Then if the condition both of 100 and 4 will be satisfied, then it is going to be a leap year. That is what the else part is speaking about. The last else statement is saying that if it is not even divisible by 4, then for sure it is not going to be a leap year. Remember, this second if and the third if will only be executed when the first if is true. That means if 4 If a year is divisible by 4, then only the rest of the print statements will be executed or the block of code will be executed. Otherwise, none will be executed. So this was about all about the conditional statements that we have learned in the last around 40 to 45 minutes back. Now we will see the list. Okay. List is also a type of container where you can store numerous values. Like in a variable, you can only use one value. In the list or any in there are various numerous data types such as dictionary, uh, or tuples, sets, list. You can use numerous store. You can use store numerous values. This is what is written over here is that list Python objects can store all types of data like integer, float, string, boolean, list, etc. List is also a type of data type, remember. List is mutable, that means you can change it. It is modifiable, it you can manipulate it. And remember, list is orderable. Okay, it is modifiable, it is orderable, and can complete duplicate data. While when you will see in the upcoming sessions, then you will find that a list cannot a list or the other data types such as sets, tuples, or other dictionaries cannot contain the duplicate data. Okay, we can access each item in a list using the index, which starts from 0 to n minus 1. That means a list can store number of values. Suppose it has 3 values. Then the first element will have the index 0, other will have 1, the rest will have the similarly in the continuation. Remember, if there are n items in a list, the index will range from 0 to n minus 1. If there are 4 items in the list, then the indexes will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Then there are different ways that you can create a list. The very simple one is list constructor. Here we have used a list such as my list, and list items are always enclosed inside a bar brackets. Okay, the second example of my list has 3 values: red, blue, and green. These red, blue, green are string type of data variables that are stored inside a list. Okay, now we have a constructor list as an example where it shows that you can create a list using the list constructors. That means test1, test2, and test3 are not lists, but they are just uh they are just a array of words that are stored inside a list, and but this array can be created in a list using the list constructor. Okay, okay, so this list, suppose if you want to copy a list, suppose we have my list one as a list and my list is this list. Okay, now if my list 1 is equal to my list, this statement shows that they both will point out to a same memory location. That means suppose my list has particular address in your memory, then my list 1, which is now a copy of my list, will also point to that particular location only. Remember, now students is again a list. That means that this is a list inside a list. This is a list inside a list. That means 1 comma Amit, which is enclosed in a bar bracket, is itself a list. Similarly, 2 dot Akhil, 3 dot Preeti, and 4 dot Shoaib, these are an independent list, but they are again inside a list. That means you can have a list inside a list. Now, how to iterate on the list using for loop. See, you can iterate in a list using a while loop also. We don't have a much knowledge of loops over here, but I can tell you a basic understanding of the loop is that loops are basically used to perform a particular task number of times. Okay, there in Python we have two loops, for and while. While is a conditional loop. That means it will be executed until unless a particular uh, a particular condition is satisfied. If whenever this condition goes off, the while loop will not be executed. For a for loop, there are particular number of the particular number of turns divided that are used to like repeatedly do a particular task. Okay, okay, so let's see some of the practical application of a list. Okay, Yeah, list. Okay. First, we'll see the creation, how we can create a list. Let's write some of the things that are also related to the list. So lists are, as I told you, are ordered. Mutable, that means you can modify them. And can contain duplicate values. Okay. Also, one thing that is not mentioned there in the PPT, I'll tell you here also. List can contain contain elements of different data types. Like that is not something you just have to stick to a particular data type. You can have elements of different data types. Okay. Okay. Coming back to the create, how can create a list? Suppose if you have a, we'll just have the okay. We'll just have the list name as list name. Suppose, and then we have element 1 comma, we have element 2 comma, we have element 3. Okay. Similarly, you can have many. Okay. This is just a basic idea of how you can create a list. Let's just create one more. Suppose we have a list name with my list. Okay. Now let's print. Let's just print this. Okay, so when your list with name my list is printed, I've already told you that my list is a data type. Let's just check which data type does it belongs to. We'll print type. I already told you that type takes the argument as the variable name. So here we have the my list as the variable name. We'll write that. Okay, so let's print this. Okay, so my list belongs to the class of integer. That means the data type is list. Okay. So what we have done here, that we have created a list. We have created a list, and now this list has already values that we have defined. But also what you can do, suppose we have a list name as lst. Okay, and we have an empty list there. We don't have any elements there. Now how you can add an element inside it? You can add an element inside a list using the append function. Okay, we'll write lst.append. We'll say if we have a 10 values. Similarly, if we have lst.append as 20. Okay, now we'll now print the list to see that whether the list elements are append or not. Okay, so here what we have done, we have created a list name lst, which is empty right now. Now we have used the append function to print the 10 and 20 element, to store the 10 and 20 element. This append function will store will store the element inside the list at the very last position. Since the list was empty, 10 was added at the first position and followed by a 20. Okay, so basically I've already shown you that to print a list, you simply use the print function to print it. Now, how to print each element of text? Let's see. And since you guys are not familiar with the loops, we'll see it in the later sessions. But just for an overview, I'll tell you what are the loops is. Here we'll use the for loop only. The for loop is basically a loop which has a fixed number of turns defined to execute a particular task and number of times. Okay. So let's see if we have a list here as 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. Okay. Cool. Okay. Now we'll use the for element in a list. Okay. Okay. Then we'll say print element. Okay. So what this loop will do for every element that is inside a list. For every element inside a list, that means this loop will be executed till the very last element of the list will be stored. Okay, so each of the element is printed. First of all, it takes the value of 1, then 2. Similarly, it goes on until the last element of the list is reached. Now we will see how you can access a particular element inside a list using their index. Okay. Now we'll see indexing inside a okay. So indexing is basically used access the elements also. Remember guys that index in a list always starts with 0. There is a 0 based indexing in Python. Okay. 2n-1 where n is the total number of elements. Saira. Okay. I will see the basic syntax for this as well right now only. Okay. So the syntax we have we'll write the list name. Okay. Followed by bar braces. We have to just give an index value. Okay. This was just the basic index. Okay. So here, if you have a list name as lst as 1, comma 2, is this a point? Okay, sorry, 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. Then we want to access the element. Suppose okay. Similarly, print lst. Okay. As you can see that lst contains 4 elements, so the index will go from 0 to n-1. That means from 0 to 3. So here we will see. Okay. Print lst 2. Okay. Now we'll print the like print lst. Fourth element. Okay, cool. So there are 5 elements. Okay, so it will go from 0 to 4. Okay, got it, got it. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's see what is the elements are printed or not. Okay, so as printed that, and we know that 1 is at the index 0, so this will be printed. 2 is at the index, hence it is printed. 3 is at the index 2, it got printed. 4 is at the index 3, it got printed. 5 was at the index 4, and hence it got printed. Okay. Also, one thing that you should remember, guys, that if you have a list, let's say as 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. Okay. Now, the very first element is at the position 0. I already told you. Let's see if we write this. Okay. Similarly, if you, and for the very last element, you always got the index as -1. From the beginning, when you start indexing, it is so from the beginning when you start, this is 0 based indexing, but when you start from the back, the indexing is negative. That means the 5 will be at the index -1, 4 at the -2, 3 at the -3, 2 at the -4, 1 at the -5. But when you go from the beginning, 1 is at the position 0, 2 at 1, 3 at 2, 4 at 3, and 5 at 4. Okay. Now we'll just see the last function of the list, then we will close up and we'll see some of the later part in the next session, that is tomorrow. Now we'll see the function of the len function. Okay. Okay. So the len function is basically, or the length function is, the length function returns the total number of elements that are present in a list. Returns the total number of elements inside a list. Okay. Okay. So we'll just have a basic overview of the syntax. Okay. So the syntax is for any list. Suppose if you have a list name as lst. Okay, we have a list name as lst name. Okay, then we just have to write length and the, if you have a list name as lst name, we'll write a len function. Okay, this is the basic function. Len is a keyword here, followed by an argument that has the list name as the argument. Okay, now we'll see how it works. Suppose we have a list as a, similarly we'll just have that previous list only, 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5. Okay, now we just have to see that there, how many total elements are there. Let's print len list. So I already told you the len function takes the argument as the list name. We'll run this code. Okay, as I've already told you that our list lst contains the 5 element, and hence the len function has printed the 5 elements. So this was all about the list and the functions we have studied today. Now let's look back what we have studied. I've already told you that Python contains numerous data types. As Python contains numerous data types, it also contains a data types that can store multiple values. Okay. Some of the data types I've already told you, like int, float, string, and boolean. Similarly, to store multiple values, we use list, tuple, sets, and dictionaries. So, okay, list, we already know that is a mutable data type. That means you can modify, it is orderable, and hence it can also contain duplicate value. Also, as I told you, list can store data of different data types as well. We can access the elements using the indexing, that from the forward it starts with 0 and from the backward it starts with -1. To access element which is at the first position, we use the index 0. To access the element which is at the last position, we use -1 or the n-1 index, where n is the number of items in the list. To create a list, we use the list constructor. It is list basically stores the data inside a bar braces. Whenever you copy a list, it points out to the same memory location as its parent list would be like pointing to. Now we saw some of the basic list functions, such as type, which is used to say the type of a list or the type of data type. We use the append function to store, to add or insert a new element inside a list. Remember, append always insert a value at the very last position of a list. Then we saw how we can like iterate over a particular iterate, or can have all the values of a list printed here using the for loop. Then we saw the indexing. I've already told you that indexing inside a Python is zero based from the backward and is negative indexing from the last position. Then we saw how we can like check the last and the very first element of a list using indexing. First element is at the 0th position and the last element is at the -1 position. Then we saw the length function. In the length functions returns the total elements that are stored inside a list. The list line functions takes the argument as the name of the list that you want the number of elements to be checked. In the tomorrow's lecture, we'll see some of the basic more list functions and I more about the list. Also, we'll see of the some of the loops and other things. For this time, for today, this was all about what I've taught you. In the next three sessions, we'll try to cover up more about the uh, Python. I'll try to have some more real life applications into the picture. And that was all about today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much.